Welcome to the Yellowbrick House Fundraising Summit. Today, I am sitting with Andrea Klein, the Chief Operating Officer from the Riley Divorce and Family Law Firm and author of The Path to Resilience. Such a pleasure. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and the reason why you decided to write this book.
Thank you, Rose. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me today. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Riley Divorce and Family Law Firm. I've been working in the field of family law for over 20 years. In addition to working in the law firm, I've been through divorce, not just once, but twice, and once with a very high conflict partner. So I understand intimately the both emotional and the legal challenges that people face when they're going through divorce. And that was why I wrote the book, The Path to Resilience, because there's a lot of tips in there and tricks on how to help deal with somebody who maybe has a high conflict personality and just things to look out for.
Is that what really Riley Firm mostly focuses on narcissism?
Yes, a lot of our clientele come to us because they've been a victim of narcissistic abuse, or they think they're dealing with a high conflict personality. A lot of them come to us after they've tried mediation, they've tried collaborating, and it just has fell through. It has not worked. They're like, I need somebody who has my back. And that's what the Riley Firm does. We represent business owners and professionals, and we help them get what is rightfully theirs.
What are some red flags to look out for early on in a relationship with the narcissist that can lead to violence in the relationship?
That's a great question. So, narcissistic abuse is hard to detect at first. Normally, when you're dealing with someone who's narcissistic and you're in the beginning stages of a relationship or a marriage, there is the love bombing phase. So, that's the phase where they're buying you gifts, they're texting you, they're calling you all the time, they're telling you how amazing you are, what an amazing person you are, how much they love you, and they seem like the best partner, they're the best parent, they're the best this, the best that. And so you don't really pick up on it at first. When you're in that phase, you just feel like you're on cloud nine. You're so happy and you get so enmeshed in it, right? In the relationship. It's hard to detect at first because sometimes by the time you see the signs of narcissistic personality disorder or control manipulation in a partnership, it's too late. You're already enmeshed. You're already involved in it intimately. So the first sign that they generally exhibit is controlling behavior. They start to isolate you from family and friends. They start to try to control where you are, what you're doing, who you're hanging out with. A lot of victims of narcissistic abuse find themselves very isolated. By the time they're ready to separate or leave the relationship, they don't feel like they have anybody left because the narcissist has already isolated them and alienated their family and their friends, and they feel like they have nobody to turn to. Frequent mood swings is another one, and a lot of victims of narcissistic abuse describe it as the feeling of having to walk on eggshells. Again, at first, they're the best, they're sweet, they're this, they're that, and then later on, every little thing could possibly trigger them. If they don't unload the dishwasher properly, or if they don't call when you say you're going to call or something, it can set them off and they can just go into a tirade. And so these mood swings, they make the victim feel very afraid. They don't know. They don't know if their next question, their next move is going to cause some kind of crazy mood swing. So they always feel like they're walking on eggshells, always trying to make their spouse happy, make it feel like everything's okay. They just want to kind of avoid conflict. And I know even personally for myself, that was a very big thing for me. I always wanted to avoid conflict. I didn't want to do anything that was triggering. So that's definitely a sign. Another is constant criticism. Once you're really into that relationship, it's, you're not doing things right. It should be done this way. Why didn't you do it like that? Superficial charm. To the outside world, they look like the best dad, the best partner, the best friend. But behind closed doors, it's a completely different story. They can be abusive, they're venting, they can become dangerous, violent, punching holes in walls, all kinds of things. But the outside world never sees that. They have a disregard too for boundaries. When you try to set boundaries with somebody who's a narcissist or exhibits narcissistic personality disorder, they do not respect boundaries. They do not like boundaries at all. And they will go out of their way to violate your personal boundaries.
That is a lot of information. I'm sure a lot of us can take a lot of tips from that one when we're dating. But when there is violence, how can you safely leave the relationship?
First of all, it's really important to make sure that you have a good support system in place. And you need to create a safety plan. You need to figure out where are you going to go? When are you going to leave? If there is domestic violence in the situation and the person is violent, then you need to figure out, should I be doing this while they're at work? You don't want to necessarily do it while they're home. Are there children involved? You've got to really create that safety plan first. And that's why it's so important to have a support system. And that's why I'm so grateful for places like Yellowbrick House that offers a safe place for women and children to go, because oftentimes women feel stuck because they don't know where to go. They don't maybe have a relative close by where they could just go, or a friend maybe, has a one-bedroom apartment. They don't have room for their kids. So it's really important that they have somewhere to go. With narcissistic abuse, oftentimes there is financial abuse as well. So it's not like they can have the funds to just go out and rent an apartment or get another house or something like that. There's a lot of legalities that have to take place for that to happen. Yeah, we see that a lot in our law firm, and I've experienced that a lot throughout my career.
And that's where you guys support families when you're taking them through those processes and help them with shelters as well.
Well, absolutely. We've had many clients who've had to use the services of shelters like Yellowbrick House to get somewhere safe. We have one mother right now, actually. She just got out of the shelter recently. She was in there probably for about 2 months or so with her baby, infant baby. She had nowhere to go. They gave her a secure bed, a place to be with her child, and she's now doing a lot better. She's actually a nurse. She got her nursing diploma afterwards, and she's thriving now. But if it wasn't for places like these shelters that offer women these services, she would have had nowhere to go, and we're so grateful for that.
Yellowbrick House also helped her with the funding with the education.
It was not so much the funding, it was more the counseling that really helped her, helped to get housing and things like that. She was already going through her educational path to be a nurse at the time.
What are some factors to consider when creating a safety plan from a narcissist, especially if there is a history of gender-based violence?
The first thing you need to consider is there immediate danger? What's going to happen if I leave? Is he going to track me down? Does he maybe have a tracking device or surveillance device? Because this happens a lot with narcissistic abuse. In fact, we just did a consultation with a woman. I just remember it so vividly. It was probably one of the worst cases I've seen a few weeks back, where her husband was actually surveilling her every move. There were cameras in every room in her house, including the bathroom. She had no privacy. If she even went to a dentist appointment, she had an iPad that needed to be taken with her to the dentist appointment that would record everything. I remember when she called us, she had to turn the iPad off, and she kept looking over her shoulder every 2 seconds to see someone there. It was so nerve-wracking for her. Luckily, she was able to get out of that relationship, and she's in a much better place now. That's something that people have to look out for when there's that kind of domestic violence. It's not always just physical abuse. It's emotional abuse. It's financial abuse. The other thing that you need to consider is emotional readiness. Are you actually ready to leave this relationship? A lot of, again, partners of domestic violence, they don't feel ready a lot of the time. Sometimes they don't even know that they're experiencing abuse. Sometimes they have to think, are you scared? Are you uncertain about the future? Do you have a support system in place? If you don't have a support system in place, oftentimes you're not feeling ready to leave. So that's another thing that needs to be assessed before leaving a relationship. Financial independence. Do you even have funds to secure a hotel for a few days or a month? Do you have access to a line of credit? Do you have your own bank account? Those are all very important considerations as well, because again, if you don't have access to funds, how are you going to feed your children? How are you going to survive day to day? So that's really important too. A lot of women that we see, happens to men too, but primarily women, they're not really involved in the finances in the relationship. A lot of times, one partner, usually the more controlling or more dominant partner, will be the one managing all of the household finances, the mortgage, the bank accounts, any investments that they have. So the partner who wants to leave often doesn't even know what assets they have. Through the legal process, we uncover all of that. But at the beginning, that really doesn't help them. We often advise women in, those kinds of situations where they need to leave. If there's a line of credit, take some money from the joint line of credit. We'll deal with it later in the legal process, but take what you need, get out, right? If it's an emergency.
It sounds like in a narcissistic relationship, there's a lot of financial control. The person that takes that more financial control of the home tends to be that narcissistic character. Is that what you're saying to me in most cases?
Most cases. Primarily, it's usually the narcissistic partner. And the spouse who's leaving doesn't have a lot of knowledge even of what the finances are, and usually on purpose. There's usually a reason for that. The narcissist doesn't want the victim to know about the finances because, again, they want to exert that control over their victim, right? And have that financial control. So it's very common.
So we talk about gender violence and narcissist abuse. Can you tell us how can we ensure that our voices are heard if we're experiencing both?
The most important thing here is to make sure that you consult with a family law lawyer. Even if you haven't separated yet, if you're just thinking about it or you're not sure, consult with a lawyer and learn what your rights and responsibilities are if you do decide to separate. Many people don't leave domestic violence situations because they're afraid. They either think that they're not going to be able to see their kids, or they feel like if they leave the matrimonial home, all of a sudden they're giving up their rights to it. But that's not normally the case. So it's really important for anyone who wants to leave a marriage to go and consult with a family law lawyer, get advice, get their opinion, get recommendations before taking the next step. The other recommendation I would have is to make sure that you educate yourself. For those who maybe can't afford a lawyer or they're not really sure where to get information, there are some fabulous free websites out there. One of them is called Clio, and you can go online and you can learn. Another one is Steps to Justice. That's another fantastic website where you can kind of look based on your situation, what are the different steps that I could take to get out of this situation? Another thing that you really want to make sure of from the very beginning, especially with domestic violence situations, is that you're documenting everything. Document, any injuries. If you've experienced physical violence, make sure you have pictures of those physical injuries. It's going to help you later on if you need to bring a motion or go to court. Judges rely on affidavits and sworn evidence, so evidence is very important. Document things like text messages if there's abusive language being used, or, being condescending or bullying or anything like that. Photographs, anything that is going to help you, especially if you need to apply for a restraining order or something like that to keep your spouse away from you. Really important to have documentation and evidence of why you need the court to make the order.
Would you be able to share with us a successful story of a client that was able to navigate divorcing a narcissist and what factors contributed to their success?
Absolutely. We actually represented at trial quite recently a prominent doctor in Toronto who had been going through a divorce for 5 years. It was a very, very high conflict situation. Child was a baby when they separated. And this was in courts for about 5 years until it finally went to trial. Long story, but basically the mother wanted to move to the United States with the child, and she would stop at nothing to get her and her child to the States. She went to the extent of claiming that the child was being sexually abused by the father. CAS got involved. She made this claim not just once, but twice, and she had her mother and other people corroborate her story. It was found by two criminal judges that that didn't happen. She was unreliable. She was clearly lying on the witness stand, and there were a lot of inconsistencies in her story. And so he was acquitted both times. But CAS was still involved, and they kind of kept digging into him, right? And they kind of supported mom at the trial. And it went on for, I think, 2 weeks. 2 weeks was the trial, it was 10 days. And the judge actually told CAS that they were no longer allowed to be involved in this, that the father would be able to have 50% parenting time with the child through, gradual increase, because at the time he was only getting supervised access with his then now 5-year-old son. And yeah, so he ended up winning, and he got over $50,000 in his court costs paid by the mother because it was clear that she'd made this stuff up. And that's a very common thing among narcissists. They make up their own stories, they justify them. And the courts found that she was, in fact, lying right on the witness stand many times.
There is narcissists not just in one gender,
Exactly.
in two genders.
Absolutely. This is a father who absolutely loved his son, who just wanted to have a relationship with his son. And throughout the process, he ended up actually for a little while losing his medical license because, he was on a sex predator list because of all of this, right? While they were awaiting trial. It was a scary situation, but in the end, justice did prevail and he won his son back. And glad to report he now is seeing his son 50% of the time. And the mother was ordered she has to stay here. She can't move to the States, although that was her motivation from the beginning.
Wow, I can just imagine the psychological impact that could have had on the parent.
Absolutely, and he lost so many years with his little son because of the process, because being kept away, because of CAS. CAS is, I'm not going to say anything negative about that association. They're out there to protect children, but sometimes, they get it wrong. Like everyone, we're human, right? Sometimes they get it wrong, and it happens. But the father had to endure a lot through the legal system. And in the end, he had to go for a lot of therapy. He had a therapist who actually helped out with the trial as well in terms of giving evidence, and she was fantastic. Yeah, therapy was the one thing that really helped him through it. And just having faith that at the end, justice would prevail and he would be able to see his son again.
In those cases, is that where family assessment are to be conducted? Is that something that had to happen in this case?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But the challenge is that he wasn't seeing his son. So there was no ability to assess his parenting because he was being kept away from his son. The trial was really about he's been acquitted of the criminal charges. What happens next? How do we reunite the father and the son here? But the mother kept putting up barriers to that. But it was great. The court ended up seeing that he was, in fact, a great dad, that there was no reason to be kept from him. And he did win that trial. And not very many cases go to trial. In Ontario, statistics are about, I think, 3 to 4% of all cases in Ontario go to trial. It's unlikely, but usually with extreme narcissists and high conflict situations, those are the ones that generally do tend to go to trial.
Well, I don't know what to say except thank you so much, Andrea, for today. If there was something to leave us with today as a takeaway, what is it that you would like to leave us behind with?
I like to say there's always a way out. Don't think that you're stuck in this relationship forever. If you're even contemplating separation, there's so many things that you can do to take action, small steps, baby steps, but you're going to get there. We can help you. There's a lot of resources. There's places like Yellowbrick House out there who can support you in terms of transitioning from your family home to a new home. Use the supports that are out there and just empower yourself. Knowledge is power. Go out, learn, educate yourself, meet with professionals who can help assist you in providing guidance. But you're not alone. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for today. And again, thank you for supporting the Yellowbrick House Fundraising Summit and being part of this presentation with us today.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you.
Please look us up at YouTube for more upcoming events on Yellowbrick House Fundraising Summit.